Hello, BookTube. I'm going to do a Monday Reads again, and keep in mind this is a work in progress. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with Monday Read videos. Do I want to recap every single thing that I read in the course of the weekend, and whether I do or not, what kinds of things do I want to say about the books? But for now, I thought I'd give you a snapshot of some of the things that I read this weekend. It's Monday evening, going on sunset, so my weekend is over. The week has started, but I started off the weekend. I don't really work. I don't really go anywhere. It's kind of a false distinction even to call the term weekend for me anymore. I scarcely ever put on pants. I'm not wearing them now. So my weekend really started on Friday morning. And one of the books that I read on Friday was a reread in this lovely Penguin classic. This is The Sublime and the Beautiful by Edmund Burke, by the great Edmund Burke. His treatise on the philosophy of the sublime and the beautiful. That I made the mistake of going down the rabbit hole on Friday morning, watching a whole bunch of those news show clips on YouTube. And by the time I was done, I just wanted to call a plague on all their houses. It was just it's so demoralizing to watch the American news that I wanted a great big gulp of relief. so I took this down and reread it and I didn't quite get away from the chatter of American news shows and the nihilism of American life these days, because the parts of this reread that stuck with me were all the parts on terror, on what terror is, how it's evoked, and how we understand it. And at first I thought, oh, well, thanks, Edmund. Some refuge you are. I should have gone to the Alexander Pope. But then his prose is just so lovely that I forgave him everything. and I had this is Penguin edition is a newish edition of the Burke by David Womersley, the great editor of Edward Gibbon, Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And that introduction I had not read. I got this volume on Book Outlet a while ago, a year ago, I think. And I thought, isn't that pretty? Mint condition, isn't that nice? And meant to read it, never got to it. And I hadn't read the Womersley introduction before, or any of the Womersley notes. So that was a lot of fun on its own. But then there were a batch of new books, most of which we've probably seen on this channel before, that I finally read this weekend. Starting with this one, Animal Viruses and Humans, subtitle A Narrow Divide. I might have mentioned this when I first got this book, that of course that for pithy rhetorical reasons is reversed. The title of this book should be A Narrow Divide, and the subtitle should be Animal Viruses and Animal and Human Viruses. But one way or another, it was really, really good. It was really good. It's about, in the narrow sense, it's about zoonoses. It's about viruses, animal viruses, that make the great trek, the great jump to humans, and what it means for humans that that's happening with more and more regularity. As human travel and human population, human commerce extends now to every tiny corner of the world far more immediately. So someone could be in a tiny village in northwestern China on a Monday morning, be in a big city in China on Monday night, and be in Los Angeles on Tuesday. With no time in between. It used to be that the time lag of travel meant that if you were in a tiny village in northwestern China on Monday morning and got infected with something harrowing, something from a chicken or from adulterated food or adulterated water, you had a length of time. In olden days, you had a length of time before you got back home. A length of time that, since the virus was new to you and to humans, and since you had therefore no immunity to it, you would die before you got back home. And that created a natural buffer zone for protection that doesn't exist anymore. And the book is narrowly about that. But the thing that surprised me about it and pleased me about it is that it's also much broader. This author is a fantastic teacher. This is it is about that, but it's also much more broadly about what viruses are just in general. And I think I have a passage that I want to read you. Yes? Yes. Viruses are merely tiny packages of DNA or RNA encased in layers of protein and sometimes bits of carbohydrate. They have been modified by genetic variation, gifting them with the sinister ability to grab onto some already fixed molecule on the surface of their host cells, which affords them entry to a fertile farm of substrates. The intercellular feast allows the virus to furiously replicate itself. The influenza viruses are masters of this technology and have gained notoriety because, even under tight surveillance, they keep changing and returning year after year in ever newer guises that may endow them with characteristics that result in pandemic bursts of disease and death. Oftentimes, newer strains of influenza replace one or more of the older ones, but sometimes they are merely added to the previous mix. Influenza is the only disease whose epidemic-level outbreak heralds a rise in the mortality rate above that normally observed in non-epidemic years. And as you could tell from all the adverbs there and the colorful language, in addition to teaching you really easily and clearly what viruses are, what viral movement is, what the human immune system is like, he's also a very vivid writer. I loved it. I don't know if I'm ever going to get a hardcover copy of this, or if it's even coming out in hardcover. But this is a keeper. So if the subject interests you, the grotesque, gruesome subject interests you, I recommend it. Then the next one is a novel, I believe a debut novel. This is What Should Be Wild by Julia Fine, about a young girl who kills things by touching them and can revive them by touching them as well. And her father, when he first notices this behavior of hers, that she kills her mother, and he has to brush her mother against her to bring her mother back to life, how she'll walk across a lawn of grass, killing the grass in her footsteps, and he has to walk her back across her own path to bring the grass back. Her father, when confronted with this in their little cottage by the woods, doesn't appear surprised. He takes it in stride. And we learn later on in the course of the book that that's because he's very familiar with not just his little girl, but with a whole heritage of women who have been supernaturally gifted in or around this forest. And as you can tell from that description, this aims to be a blend of contemporary fiction and a very strong early fairy tale, early folk tale, dark supernatural element. That's a very tricky thing to pull off, and I was very pleased. This author pulls it off. There are bits in the middle, or not the middle, really, 3/4 of the way through, where the narrative tension flags for a bit. I got the distinct impression that was less worked over than the rest of the book. But in every part of the book, regardless of that, in every part of the book, the language, the pacing, the crispness is so wonderful, so bracing, that I was never tempted to stop reading. Just wonderful. These Monday reads are a work in progress. I don't know. Are they going to be recommendations? But I can't help it. I'm an old warhorse when it comes to recommending books. And when I've got one in my hand, if you're looking for dark supernatural fiction that's really intelligently done, this is a very good choice. And another one is history. We saw it on this channel before. It's Jim DeFelice's West Like Lightning, a history of the Pony Express, and it's delightful. I knew it would be. You can't go wrong with the story of the Pony Express, and the author helps that along all that he can with tiny bite-sized sub-chapters, tiny bite-sized subheadings, and also by broadening his narrative scope to extend well past just the history of the Pony Express. He makes the very wise decision to talk about the tall tales and folklore that the Pony Express inspired even in its own time, and traces down the people who were involved in that folklore and the people who wrote the dime novels and the penny dreadfuls and whatnot, and establish these tall tales all around this mail service. But he also works in the history as well, and tons of it. All of it so smoothly that, oh, you all know that I love nonfiction. I love history and biography, and I have heard many questions from you all over the years saying, well, isn't it a bit heady? Isn't it a bit much? I feel a little intimidated. This is exactly the kind of history that need not intimidate anyone. This is a hoot. Just a hoot. It's just a gallop of a book. And I do recommend it. And even if you're not really interested in the American West, which I'm not, kinda. I know some people that are American West nuts, that are cowboy nuts. I know one person, or actually he's dead now, but when he was alive, he knew every single tiny detail of things like the Pony Express or Buffalo Bill or anything like that. Every detail of every town, every city, every trail, every horse, every gun, every manufacturer's label, all of it. And never wrote a single book. Just loved it all. He was that interested in it. I've never been quite like that, but boy, oh boy. when an author has a story like this, when he tells it like this, I'm all for it. The next one is a mighty hard sell. So we saw it on this channel, and I was overwhelmed. It's from Oxford University Press, and it is in 2018. I'm we're getting to the halfway point of 2018, so I'm starting to look now at the shape of 2018's books just in toto, and look at all the interesting ones, the smart ones, the dumb ones, the insane making ones, and also the pretty ones. Just the times where some publisher remembered to do every aspect of the production of a book correctly instead of just one or two aspects. And this is one of them. Oh my. The first thing that strikes you about it is how beautiful it is. This is Diogenes Laertius, Lives of the Eminent Philosophers, from Oxford University Press, with the gold gilt raised letters, and a new translation by Pamela Mensch, who did the landmark Arion. And boy, oh boy, it's I don't know if I can show you without upsetting. It's illustrated all throughout, and in addition to that, you can make it out here. The bottom of every page is covered in footnotes, and the footnotes are utterly fantastic, just incredibly good. The translation is really good too. I have no interest, of course, in philosophy, and I have no interest in the lives of ancient philosophers at all, especially since this is mytho-history at best. So a big new commercial edition of Diogenes Laertius, I would have thought, I'll read it, but I won't love it. I have Diogenes Laertius in the Loeb Classical Library. As far as I know, Penguin Classics has never even done an edition of him. And so I thought, I'll read this, but it'll be of interest, but it won't jump out. But boy, did it ever. It's a whole world of friendly, accessible scholarship that just done perfectly. Oxford, of course, has an ancient track record at doing exactly this, so I shouldn't be that surprised. But Diogenes Laertius, the Lives of the Eminent Philosophers, is not exactly a thing you'd think could ever be polished for the parlor, and yet it is. This was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I don't know that there's more than 4 of you listening to me that would in any way be even remotely interested in this, or maybe have somebody in your life who is. But if you are, I don't know how this is going to be stocked in stores. We're at the wrong time, right? I mean, if this came out in October, you would see a stack of this in stores, because something like this would be primed for the book holidays, for gift-giving holidays at the end of the year. Coming out in early spring, I don't know. I don't know. But for what it's worth, if you happen to see it or happen to hear of it or whatever, I strongly recommend it. It's not for everybody, but I strongly recommend it. It is a magnificent job done at the job it's doing. And the last thing I want to show you for now is another new book, and I want to separate it a little as a category on Monday Reads as the weekend's biggest pleasant surprise. I went into this book with hope, but with firm expectations of what I would be getting, and I was pleasantly surprised on every page. And it's fiction, believe it or not, contemporary fiction. It's Maxim Luskov. It's Come West and See. His debut collection of short stories, interlinked short stories, set in the American West, in the hopeless recesses of the American West, the dying strip malls, the tiny towns, the rampant endemic poverty, the thwarted young masculinity, the the political hopelessness, the same seedbed of generational resentment, cultural resentment that gave us President Donald Trump, which was made me originally think when I originally saw this book, okay, well, as you all know, I love debut collections of stories. I love debut novels. I love debuts just in general. I give them the benefit of the doubt and I smile upon them because you never know what's going to come from them. You can have somebody that has a debut collection. It's really good, knocks your socks off, and they never write anything again. You could have a debut collection that strikes you as ho-hum, and 40 years later, you're still reading that author. I just love that. I love that blank page feeling. But nevertheless, when I saw this originally, I thought, I don't owe that section of the American population anything. Where once I viewed them with a small amount of sympathy, now, like any right-thinking American, I virulently hate them because of what they did in 2016. You can feel resentment and disillusionment with your government or your country. That's fine. I often do. But to take all of that and weaponize it into foisting upon the country and the world a racist, sexist, lying, fascist, moron, buffoon sort of erases your credit of sympathy. And I admit I should have better control, but I admit I went into this with a little bit of that resentment still there, thinking, okay, you're going to give me sympathetic portraits of these people, and they might have been sympathetic when you were writing these stories in a workshop 4 years ago, but they're not sympathetic anymore. And I was wrong. Totally wrong. What a book. Oh, what a book. What a writer. Jeez. The stories hit very different tonal registers. They vary wildly. The voice of the narration. I mean, granted, it's always different characters, but he's, in addition to different characters as viewpoints, he's also trying different vocal registers in his narration. And I didn't find one that was done poorly. And in terms of just page-turning readability, this is a really, really talented young author. Let me give you a look at him. There he is. And so, this is probably obscenely expensive. Yeah, it's $26, $30 with tax. So that's a lot for a debut collection of interconnected short stories that's not very long. I don't know. How people do it. I really don't. I don't know how people do it. I know bookstore employees get a discount, a fairly healthy discount, but not many people are bookstore employees. I don't know how ordinary bookworms do it. When you go into a new bookstore, a retail bookstore, Barnes & Noble or something like that, and you see a bunch of things that intrigue you, I don't know how you do it. How do you stop yourself from spending $200 that you can't afford on books like this? I don't know. So I feel a little guilty recommending it. But if you have disposable income, if you have a book budget per month, even if it's as high as $200 or even more, God bless you, I recommend this book. I recommend buying it. I do recommend, requesting it at your library, getting them to buy it or whatever. But since it's a debut novel, I can't let it go without also recommending that as many of you as are interested actually buy it. I would like this author to have the most visceral encouragement imaginable to keep writing, and that is the sale of his book. That's money. So this was the weekend's pleasant surprise, to put it mildly. I went in here ready, knives on the table, and was totally won over by the storytelling, even though I would never want to meet any of these people. I would never want to be in any of these lives or any of these situations, even though it didn't matter. After the first story, it didn't matter, and I just kept going. So that's how we're going to break things down here, I guess, for now. I'll show you. We've got Lives of the Eminent Philosophers. Really good. A beautifully done, beautifully created, and lovingly done translation, notes, everything. A new edition of an ancient writer that almost nobody's ever heard of. Then West Like Lightning. A great new history of the Pony Express. Perfect for any history fan on your list. Then What Should Be Wild, a weird Grimm's fairy tale type novel that I believe is a debut. Then Animal Viruses and Humans, about a problem that's going to affect us all as time goes on, more and more, because the barriers between the animal world and the human world get thinner with every intercontinental plane trip. Then, well, this doesn't really... I mean, Edmund Burke, his treatise on the sublime and the beautiful is... the parts that I read that stuck out on me were all about terror and debasement. But even so, of course, I recommend Edmund Burke. And the surprise of the weekend, Come West and See, a debut short story collection of contemporary fiction. I know I'm as surprised as you are that I'm recommending anything like that. You'd think my highest recommendation of the weekend would be the Diogenes Laertius, but no, no, it's some guy who wrote a collection of short stories that knocked my socks off. So that's it. That's Monday Reads for now. Feel free in the comments field to let me know how I should be tweaking this. Or is this okay? I know. Because you're all warped. Because this is a horrible, mutually enabling relationship. I know what most of the comments are going to be. Most of the comments are going to be, tell us about all the books you read. Make a video longer. We want 40-minute videos. I don't know what's wrong with you people. But in addition to that, if you do any suggestions that you have about what you might like the form of Monday Reads to take, I will definitely do it. Touching base on Monday about the reading that I did all weekend feels great. That's a great idea. I'm glad I came up with it. But if we can tweak it, that would be great. So let me know. And also feel free to tell me about your own weekend's reading. Monday is here. Monday is actually westering down to an end here in Boston. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.